In this lecture, we will discuss about the mechanical properties of the solid. And we know in our daily life there is different properties associated with the solids. And some material are ductile, some are elastic, some have plastic nature, some is brittle. Do not absorb the external shock. These all properties associated with the solid will be discussed in this lecture in more detail. So that all properties is called the mechanical properties. So mechanical property describe how a material react to applied force. If we apply the external force, external load and the material, so what will be the response of that material to that external force? So these properties help determine the material usefulness. There are different material and we will use that according to our desire. So in some places the material is used which is brittle. Some material have ductile nature and they have different uses. So if you know in more detail about the mechanical properties of the solid, so we will so then you will able to put the right solid in the right place for the right job. So if we apply the external force and the material, and from that external force, the material will have some behavior, some response to that external force. So from that response, we will see that is it brittle material, is it a ductile material, or having other nature. Strength is the ability of the material, is the ability of the solid material to withstand an applied force without failure. Here and this body and this roof, all of them is applying the force on this roof, and this roof will have some ability to sustain that external force, and this ability of this roof is called the strength of this solid material. Second property is the hardness of the solid material. Hardness measure how resistant a material to a scratching or indentation. So if we apply the external load on the other material in order to scratch them, if this material is scratched easily, then we call this as a less hard material. If there is more effort required to scratch this material, then this material is said to be more hardened. So the diamond is more hardened, and there are some carbon steel, mean that the steel which is which contain most carbon atoms, we call this that is a carbon steel. So if we put insert the steel inside that carbon by the diffusion forces, then that steel become hardened. Okay, and the diamond is also a hardened material. So if we apply the external force on this diamond, this diamond will be breakable without going towards elongation. There is no nature of the ductility present in this diamond. Okay, in the other word, which I mean is that if the material is more hardened, then it will be more brittle. Okay, it will have low impact to external resistance, and it is breakable by applying the external force. And if we apply the more external force on this hard material, there will be no elongation occur in that material, and the material will be breakable. Okay, and from here we conclude that the hardened material is those material which have the ability to resist to external scratching. If the material is more resistant to scratching, then that material will be hard material, and hard material must be more brittle material. And if we apply the external force on the hard material, there will be no elongation occur in the hard material, and that material will called as a brittle material. Okay, brittleness of the solid material refers to the ability of materials to break easily when the external force is applied on this material. So if we apply the external force on this material will be break easily without going towards elongation. And similarly, this is the concrete. In this concrete, if we exert the external force, there will be no elongation occur, and this material become break easily. Okay, on the external impact. And example of these brittle material include the cast iron. Cast iron are those iron which consist of the carbon percentage in this iron. If we insert the carbon to the iron by diffusion forces, then that iron become the hardened material, and if the material is more hard, it will be more brittle. Similarly, concrete, if we exert the force, external force on this concrete will be breakable without going towards elongation. Similarly, the ceramics are those material. If we exert the external force on this, and this material will be suddenly breakable and without going towards the elongation. Similarly, some urea formaldehyde is also a brittle material. Toughness of the solid material is the ability of material to absorb the suddenly external force or the shock when applied on this material. So here we have these two material which is represented by this uh, black lines here. So if we apply the sudden force on these material and these two material, and if this material absorb that external sudden shock, that external sudden force, then this material will be more tough. Okay, if we exert the same external force on this material and it become brick, okay, then we call this them as a less tough. So toughness is actually the ability of that material to absorb the external force. So toughness is the ability of the material to absorb the sudden impact or the shock when applied on this. So this was that example. So if we apply the external force by shock them with the hammer, then if this material absorbs that external shock, then this material will be more tough and as compared to this material, because this material has this material is a brick when we apply the force on this. So from here we conclude that if the material is more breakable, okay, if the material is more brittle, if the material is more hard, then their toughness will be less. This property is opposite of the brittleness. If the material is more brittle or more hard, then their toughness will be less, and it is measured in energy per unit area. Now, plasticity is the ability of the material which do not regain its original shape when we remove the external force from this body. So here we have this scenario. In this scenario, we have this metal rod, and this metal rod is supported on these two ends by this supporting material. Okay, so if we apply the external load on this material in this position, and this become bent, okay, and if we remove this external force, and this material is still is in own position, and it do not regains to its original shape, then we call this as a plastic material. So plasticity describe material that deform permanently when a small force are applied. So if we apply the small force, the deformation will be permanent, it will do not regain its original shape. Example of the plastic material include the clay and plasticine. Plasticity, on the other hand, is the ability of the material which regain its original shape when the external force is applied on that body. So if we apply the external small force on this body which is supported in this way, and if we exert the force in this position, so there will be the change in the shape of this body will be occur. So this body has changed its shape. So if we remove this external force from this body, the body will again come to its original position, and this property of the solid material is called elasticity. So elasticity is the ability of material to return to its original shape. So here it become returns to its original shape here. Okay, and after the applied force is removed, if we remove the external force, then it returns to its original shape. This ability of the solid material is called elasticity. Example include the rubber. If we apply the external force on this rubber, and if we remove that external force, the rubber will regain again come to its original position. So the rubber is more elastic. Similarly, the mild steel is also the more elastic. So those steel which do not contain the carbon. So if we insert the carbon element in by diffusion into the steel, then they become more hardened and brittle, and it will become plastic. Okay, so here the mild steel is example of the elastic material, and certain plastic like nylon is the example of the plastic material. Stiffness is the property of the is the ability of the material to resist to bending when the force is applied. So if we apply the external force on the material, then it resists to bending. Okay, it do not want to change their shape. Okay, so this properties of the material is called the stiffness of the solid material. Ductility is, on the other hand, is the ability of the solid material which is stretched into thin wires or threads. So if we apply the external force on such material, then their length has increased. Okay, so due to which it can be converted into other shape you want. So any shape you want is your desire, then you will use this ductile material, and this ductile material adopt any shape. So example include the gold. If we apply the external force on the gold, there they can change their shape, and it may convert it into the a disc like shape or any other form. Okay, any other shape. Okay, so copper is the wire. If we apply the external force, it will convert into the threads like shape. And titanium, rough iron, and low carbon steel and brass are the example of ductility. So ductility is the ability of material to stitch into thin wires or thread. This ability, this increase in the length or change in the shape of the material, of the solid material, this ability is described by the ductility of that solid material.